Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Dunn. I'm the host of Humble Pie, a show where we talk about how personal struggles undergird professional triumph. And there is no better person to talk to today than Mr. Danny Rensch. Danny, who is a co-founder of chess.com and the author of an amazing new book, which we'll do the song and dance in a second, called Dark Squares, that I happen to have read in its entirety over the last 24 hours. Can we dive right in?
Let's do it. Let's jump in.
Tell me the first time in your life where it dawned on you that you grew up in a cult.
Oh man, am I allowed to say while writing the book for 4 years? You would think and want to believe that I had perspective about it even before that process, and I think I did. I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not as much as you would think. Because for me, I grew up with so much indoctrination, and I developed such a protective instinct over the word cult.
Yeah.
Even as I educated myself and started using language of high demand, like high stress religious groups, like starting to understand that there were some gray areas
What's high
of the type
demand?
of cult. High demand is a lot of like what I described there in terms of like having a hierarchy, expectations of how you will, perform and be deemed worthy of the group, which helps people feel even more, even more devoted to it, which is a weird game that a
Yeah.
lot of manipulators play. So what I would say is that even as I educated myself and really felt like I had perspective over a lot of the shortcomings of the group
Yeah.
and a lot of the abuse I had gone through was no longer being denied.
Yeah.
I was still protective over people calling it a cult, and there were two practical reasons for that. And I have never actually talked about the second one, but I'm thinking of it now, so I want to share it.
Mm.
The first one is that, again, I was indoctrinated to believe it wasn't a cult. I was
Yeah.
shown videos of Waco and the burning double wide trailers. I
Yeah.
was talked to about Heaven's Gate, and I knew all about Jonestown. I was sort of conditioned to believe that those were cults. We were
Yeah.
not a cult. So that was the first thing, is that I just didn't believe it, and I didn't want the words to be used because I didn't feel like it was fair.
Yeah.
As I learned again about my abuse and reflected on the fact that there are a lot of very similar wounds, even if the outcome wasn't as tragic, there were a lot of things that were right in line, and the emotional scars, the mental health scars we carried were very similar to a lot.
Yeah.
But the second reason I was super protective that a lot of people don't know is that as the group fell apart, I didn't
Hmm.
just go from the group falling apart to moving to Utah.
Hmm.
I was very active in the local scene in Payson, Arizona.
Hmm.
In fact, I was the middle school basketball coach.
Hmm.
I was a very active community member
Were
with
you a
my.
good coach, by the way?
I think I was a good coach. Well, that's my boys about that. But we did pretty good. We made the playoffs both years in a row.
That's pretty good.
And I had my two sons, Nash and Warner.
Hmm.
We also have two girls, but they were little, and I was protective over it because of my last name. Because my
Hmm.
last name was Rensch, and my
Yeah.
father, for many people, was actually known as the cult leader even more than Stephen Camp.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I was protective over the terminology and didn't even like it when former members of the group started kind of throwing that line out, oh, we were all raised in a cult, is because I was like, hey, my kid's safety is at stake here. Like,
Yeah.
I remember growing up when people were running us off the road, when there were
Yeah.
bodyguards running around the village, and stuff that I didn't even share that much in detail in the book. Like, we
Yeah.
were under assault for being in a cult religious group.
Yeah.
Regardless of the fact that we may have been a cult, we didn't deserve what was coming our way.
Yeah.
And so I was very protective over the idea that we would be labeled a cult because I didn't want my kids to have to deal with the shit that I dealt with growing up.
Yeah.
I've never talked about that on camera. Thank you. This is going to be a great conversation.
Well, how did you
That's
get comfortable with it then? Right.
well. I think part of it, we moved.
Okay.
We moved to Utah right at the
Cult people
pandemic.
are pretty committed.
It's true. No, but I really do think I underestimated that the physical safety I felt
Yeah.
was just starting to begin.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we moved to Utah and I was suddenly thriving. In fact, my wife would probably tell you that some of the worst panic attacks she's ever seen me deal with
Mm.
have actually happened in the last 5 years since we
Mhm.
moved to Utah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what happens in that process is like my body doesn't default to being at peace. My
Yeah.
body doesn't default to feeling like everything's okay
Yeah.
or that I can take a breath and just chill on this Sunday. In
Yeah.
fact, some of like my worst panic attacks were like after chess.com had done so well that I was like, I'm going to be okay. We're going to be in Utah. All of a sudden it was like I was like freaking out. Like I had some really crazy, episodes, which I can tell you about if you care, but it was wild to see how much my body was not comfortable. But I think I see that now for what it is, that I was learning to let go and relax. And that is something I've learned in therapy, is often the hardest moments when you can literally see the light a little bit at the end of the tunnel, even if I didn't know that's what was happening.
Yeah.
And then I started writing this book, and I started really reflecting on my willingness to name it. I think that was the thing that I didn't realize, that was one of the things I'm ultimately proud of, or people now ask me, why did you do it? I realize now that I for my own understanding of my life, for my own healing, and maybe for others, I needed to have the courage to name it for what it was.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of years refusing to name it for what it was.
It's funny with our books sitting on top of each other here that for me, the word bipolar was similar to that. It is an essential part of my story, is the journey with that mood disorder. But just naming it, it felt like that held so much power
Yeah.
over me. And yet the irony or the paradox is that naming it is what gives you the power, because then you can put it on the table and it doesn't own you anymore.
Yeah.
And you can share it.
Yep.
How is it the case that you decided to write something before? Because for me, the order of that was flipped. Like, I had dealt with the bipolar thing in therapy, the specter of it, and that led to, okay, I want to tell this story now. For you, it's kind of funny how there was maybe a little bit of inversion
Yeah,
there, where you knew you wanted to tell a story, but it's almost like you didn't know exactly what story you were going to tell, or what language you were going to use. How did that happen?
I love that framing of it, because you're making me realize in real time how true that really is. And by the way, I argued with Andy to put his book on top, because his book actually was one of the reasons I partly went down the road. Andy gave me some really good advice. So anyway, just wanted to say that for the fans. Your book is phenomenal, by the way.
Thanks.
And it I'm going to answer your question, but I do want to say this, not to blow smoke at your book, that part of the way you talked about it and the candor you showed about that process was a big part of something I shared with my wife early on, which is, I'm not going to do this to have a Hollywood ending. This isn't going to be something I do to then snap my fingers and say, and then I moved to Utah and my marriage was good. If I'm going to do this, I'm really going to share, and I'm
Yeah.
really going to be honest with, like,
And Shauna was on board with that?
100%.
Yeah.
And obviously you now know that there was a lot of rated R details shared about our early marriage and all that stuff. And so what I want to say is, what you just said, back to having mentioned that about your book, and how much I enjoyed that you opened up in the way you did. I was recently called by someone an unreliable narrator. And this is exactly what you just referenced, in that the person reading this book, someone I deeply respect and very smart, was like, I got the sense reading this that not only are we realizing that current Danny is almost reviewing this story to kind of help his earlier part sort of heal and understand,
Yeah, of course.
but also that you are figuring this out for yourself in real time, like almost
Yeah.
like you are unreliable to
Yeah.
us, and that we don't know how it's going to end, because you're still coming to terms
Yeah.
with what it was. And so part of the reason I committed to it is its own funny story, because I've told it before, so I won't do the long version of it. But basically, I was pushed by Bobby Hull, Logic the rapper, not Raptor. He's a rapper, not a dinosaur. I was pushed by him to do a memoir if I was ready to do this, and so we ended up shopping it around, and it kind of got away from me. Like, before I knew it, we were in a bidding war, and we had a bunch of really great offers from all of the major publishers, because the
cool.
story of how does the guy who's like kind of running the chess world get there? Oh, he was taken away from his mother because the cult leader was obsessed with chess.
Yeah.
Okay, sign me up. This is going to be a movie someday. Like, let's go.
I
right?
agree with that, by the way.
And so
TV series, I think, but
yeah, and so I'm obviously very fortunate that was the case. So I'm not trying to say it as a flex. I'm saying, like, there was a part of me that, like, it kind of got away from me a little bit, and I didn't even really. I knew I was ready to do it. I felt like I wanted to do it for my own sort of selfish reasons, as a bit of a, you mean I'm going to get paid to do a book, which is basically therapy? Okay, that sounds good. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
And I think there were a lot of things that I thought I had sort of figured out about it, or I went in with the intention to say X, and maybe I ended up saying Z.
Yeah.
And that's, I'll stop there, because it's already been a long enough answer, but I'm just agreeing with you that it was a bit of a wild journey. It kind of got away from me. Maybe in hindsight that was a good thing, or because maybe I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did the Logic thing play out?
Okay.
Like, what's
So
the
I will tell you
origin
the story.
story there?
Okay, you
Yeah.
want that? Okay. So
Yeah.
and I shouldn't assume that people have heard it. That's that's a mistake. But so it's funny because when the boom happened, the level of A-listers and celebrities who were on chess.com just
Yeah.
maybe they had always been into chess, but it just kind of exploded.
And the boom in your mind is COVID or Queen's Gambit or
To get
both?
together.
Okay.
I think that it's a chicken or the egg thing. I think that
Okay.
the Queen's Gambit had the potential as a miniseries to change the trajectory of our business.
Yeah.
But combined with the fact that a lot of people were inside streaming content at
Yeah.
unhealthy levels, it helped, right?
And did you know the first episode of Queen's Gambit that you saw, were you like, oh, wow, this is going to be a big deal for us? Or were you not really,
We
kind of had to play out?
what's funny is we had heard early rumors of the Queen's Gambit.
Okay.
Then we started dealing a little bit with their sort of BD marketing team in August of 2020
Okay.
before the show came out.
Netflix's team.
Yes,
Okay.
before it came out in October.
Mm-hmm.
But because Netflix, as I've learned, because now we've done multiple documentaries with them, like about the scandal, they answer to no man. They don't tell you anything because they don't
Yeah.
have to because they're Netflix, right? So again, you would think people would be like, why wouldn't Netflix want to have an early relationship with the world's largest chess platform because we would help drive interest? But again, I think Netflix is just so powerful; they don't need anybody in their way, right?
Yeah.
So people have been surprised to hear that we knew very little to nothing about this show that was coming. We knew there was a show coming. We knew that Anya Taylor-Joy was in it, but other than that, it was kind of like.
We don't know.
Right. So when the world starts seeing advertisements for it in around the late summer is when we're kind of brought in. There was a small group of folks at Netflix who emailed back and forth with me and at the time our current director of business development. He's gone on to other things now, but he and I were doing a lot of the back and forth and negotiations with them. And we didn't really know how big it was going to be, but we were interested in doing anything we could. So the biggest thing we did that was a huge win was we kind of pulled a fast one on them a little bit, and that we said, hey, we're going to develop a bot, a likeness character around this person, and people will have a chance to play the heroine of the story, Beth Harmon, right? And they agreed to it in writing, in email.
Wow.
And that was their version of, oh, that's a cool way to tie in the chess community because now they're interested in playing ball. Well, this became a massive, massive hit for us. I mean, it was like tens of millions of games, a week, and then it just continued to explode. The fact that people could play this character who they were in love with from the show just like became to the point where, without getting into all the legal back and forth, here comes February 21, and they were like demanding that we take it down, and we were like, well, you said yes, and I won't tell you how that ended. Everything's peacefully. There were no lawsuits, but it was a funny story.
Did you meet the actress?
I've never met Anya. No.
She did such a great job.
She did such a great job.
She was such a big part of that.
Yeah, it was huge. Like
the performance was such a high quality.
It really was, and that was, I think, a big reason why it also resonated with a very global chess audience that can be overly gatekeepy at times in terms of the chessboard's set up wrong, or she doesn't look like a chess player, but she crushed it.
She was such a great vehicle for it.
She's so great.
That was part of what made it fun. Reminds me of Hamilton the musical, where you have this vehicle for the story of America told through an unexpected cast.
Yes.
And you would think chess, the guys behind you on the wall.
Yep.
And here comes Beth Harmon.
Yep. No, and nowadays I joke with people that they did such a good job that depending on who you talk to and you say name like the most famous chess player like some people will go, who's the American who played the Russians in the 70s? And I always say you can define someone's fame by a person's ability to describe them without naming their name. So it's like, who's the guy who played the American who played the Russians in the 70s? They don't know it's Bobby Fischer, but they know it's Bobby Fischer.
Yeah.
The next one is always, who's the Russian who lost to the computer in the 90s? It was like IBM's Deep Green or something. They name it wrong. It was Deep, but they know the person.
Yeah.
And then the next one they go is like, was the red-haired girl who played chess, was she real or not?
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember. Was that a true story or not?
Yeah.
That is a thing I have been told dozens of times, right?
Yeah.
So that tells you the level of fame. I think she's the third. I mean, Magnus is very recognizable, but I think she's the third most recognizable chess face ever.
68 million people or whatever.
Yeah.
So we were talking about logic and the origin story of the book.
So what happened with the A-listers interested in chess was wild. I mean, people were inside because of COVID, and we also launched at the time I don't know if our camera can even, I'll point to it later, we'll show a little zoom in, but that see that purple Chess Life above you right there?
Yeah.
That is the cover of Chess Life magazine. right when the chess boom was happening, called the new chess boom.
Why does Hikaru get the biggest
Well, because
face?
Hikaru is the biggest streamer, and I'm a small little person there holding like the business partnership up with Twitch, which is, I think, a good depiction. I had no creative influence over this, but it's not a bad depiction of kind of my role. And I think what we
Wait,
saw,
that's you in the top left?
top right, no, over in the right, I'm holding a little Twitch
Oh
icon
yeah,
right
so you
there.
got way more hair
Yeah,
than
yeah,
that guy.
yeah.
And way better looking.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, we don't want to identify him
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Let's blot him out.
The
So the
So
streamer revolution's
yeah, the
happening.
streamer revolution combined with COVID was just killer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the A-listers who were getting into chess, some of them came in because of the streamers, some of them came in from chess, but it didn't matter. It was
Yeah.
combining, and Bobby was a big part of that boom. And so he and I became very fast friends. I started giving him private chess lessons just for fun.
Yeah, on Zoom or whatever.
On Zoom.
Yeah.
And then I remember the first lesson where our relationship got real, because he gets on, he's like, dude, I know we're scheduled, but like, do you ever get depressed? I'm like, do I? Like, I'm on antidepressants right now.
Yeah.
Like, this is my life. Like, welcome to 7 years on Zoloft at the time. And I was actually still in Payson at the time. So, because we hadn't quite left in the boom when the collective was falling apart. So I ended up moving to Utah. Don't tell Bobby this at all. Now our lessons have continued, but I'm in Utah, and he's this is the twist ending. I'm going to learn that he got out of LA around COVID, and where did he move? Utah. He was 10 minutes away from me.
Oh wow.
And he was keeping this whole thing on the DL. Like, his public address was still in Malibu and
Wow.
all these things. So we end up in a call where like we're shooting the shit, and he's like, I make a comment about being in Utah, and he's like, wait, you're from Utah? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, where are you? I give him my address. He tells me him. We're 10 minutes away from each
That's
other. Crazy, right? Because we had been friends for more than a year.
Yeah.
So totally serendipitous. I go over to his house and I tell him that, business is killing it. He loves chess, and that there had been a documentary crew interested in my life. And we were like, why do you want to do a thing about my life? They're like, well, we did our research and we learned you were raised in a cult.
But how did they know?
They looked up my name, they looked into it, they had like a tip from someone. They basically
Did
had
that surprise
information.
you that had happened, or not really?
I was surprised. And
Yeah.
and so my first thought was, this is like a weird scenario. I don't know.
Was
what's going
surprised
on.
that they looked into it, or surprised that they found out, or both?
Both, I think. But we looked into them, and we saw that they had won a Sundance Award. Like,
Okay.
they were a legit documentary company. So I had started discussions with them, and I think in hindsight, all the feelings that I needed to process about whether I was willing and ready to do this were kind of done through the idea of doing a documentary. I had talked a lot with Shauna. I had processed it out. I was ready in my mind. Now fast forward to, we're very close to agreeing to do a documentary, but I'm over hanging out with Bobby one night, because now we're friends in Utah, and we're having a drink, and we're just casually chilling. And he ends up telling me that he just finished his memoir, This Bright Future by Bobby Hall, and he also had a crazy life. And I'm like, oh, you finished your memoir? I'm about to do a documentary. And he's like, don't do a documentary, dude. I'm like, why? He's like, Hollywood will story arc your life. They're going to put you in a box. If you're really ready to tell your story, it sounds wild now that I'm learning about it. I'll hook you up with my agent.
Yeah.
She'll help us get going. And you should do a memoir, because then your memoir is going to kill it, and then people are going to buy rights to it anyway.
Yeah.
And like, he was right? And so it was like, fast forward, we submitted a proposal to all the major publishers, and ended up in a great spot where people wanted the book, and we had multiple good offers, and ended up going with Hachette. And a big story part of that is because they had an editor who I didn't like very much in the start of the call. We weren't jiving.
Yeah.
But now I learned that he was kind of vetting me a little bit to see whether this was legit. Like, right with like 15 minutes to go, he goes, okay, Danny, I just have to say, like, I'm a 7-year Diamond member. I'm a huge fan, and like, I would love to have this story. So that is I know that's long, but that's actually a quick version of what happened there.
One of the things that struck me about the book was seeing the dedication to your mom at the beginning, and then going through it and reading it and seeing the way that her life through your eyes then you didn't know.
Yeah.
And now in retrospect, you have this processing
Yeah.
that you're developing of the way that your mom she wasn't your mom out of the context of the cult. It was warped.
Yeah.
What was happening to her
Yeah.
that had a big impact on the person you experienced. Can you talk about the way that you understand how a cult works in
Yeah.
terms of the hierarchy, the commitment to it, the way that you can be made to feel bad and therefore
Mm-hmm.
get more committed to it,
Mm-hmm.
and how that impacted your relationship with your mom.
Yeah. Big time. And it is a big conversation. And again, breaking the fourth wall on myself, I'll say that I continue to be a bit of an unreliable narrator because I'm still processing, I'm still grieving, I'm still coming to terms with. And anyone who reads the book obviously will understand partly why, and I can say that. I mean, like my mom died young, and it was a super sad ending to our relationship, if you want to say that, even though she gave me so much. But it was I've learned that the reason for this mechanism in groups like this, high demand, high control, or just call it a cult for what it is that the more times you get someone to prostrate themselves to the mission, to sign a covert contract that they don't even know they're signing, the harder it is to break. And so it's a lot more powerful to create a dynamic where someone doesn't feel good enough, feels consistently shamed and falling short,
Yeah.
has a path back that, of course, even if you do it, will ultimately be turned on its head anyway, because that mechanism keeps people loyal beyond their own hardship. And this isn't that different from like being in a toxic relationship with a narcissist or an abusive person, right?
Yeah.
Or often a lot of narcissists can be abusive. Like when you have someone who is
Sometimes there's a
gas
narcissist on top of the cult too.
yes,
Once in a while.
and there were a few in there, and
Yeah.
and so when you create an abusive dynamic where someone is constantly feeling less than, being gaslit, and eventually they don't even have the courage to have skepticism anymore because of
Yeah.
how many times that process has backfired,
Yeah.
and you create a place where I've said this before, that it was never Neverland in the sense that they were all children and the
Yeah.
cult leaders were the parents, which meant that in my case, if you had an actual kid like my mom had me, who found a way to have a direct relationship with the cult leaders, I could easily leapfrog her and be more important, because in the end, biological relationships were way less important than the spiritual hierarchy that you were living in.
Yeah.
And when you add that to kind of just like the basic, dynamic of what happens to someone when they're traumatized, especially young,
Yeah.
I'm not a therapist, but I've been in therapy a long time. And I feel like I always have to say that because I don't ever want to sound like I'm on a soapbox or giving therapeutic advice. But it really is true that the brain is hardwired to survive.
Yeah.
And the safest path to survival when you're an abused child is not to stop loving the abuser, it's to stop loving yourself.
Hmm.
Because it's easier to believe that if I just do it right next time, this person who is all powerful will do better by me.
Yeah.
No matter how many times you're abused, people who aren't abused have a hard time understanding, why didn't you leave? Why don't you do this? Why don't you
Yeah.
do that? But your brain becomes hardwired and conditioned to accept what you don't like,
Yeah.
but to go back to the well, because that's actually a safer place than to believe that you are all alone on your own.
Yeah.
And so abused children stop loving themselves. Maybe initially it's just self-doubt, but eventually it becomes full self-shame and self-deprecating behavior, and a hardwired kind of neurosynapse system that is
Yeah.
like, it's me who's the problem, not the abuser, because that's how you survive. So it's easy to understand with a child being abused, but when you're an adult in a cult, you're also a child being abused,
Yeah.
whether psychologically or, yes, at times physically, or in other ways, your safety of your family is threatened. Like if
Yeah.
you're not good enough spiritually, your kids could be taken. And so I now see that as clearly as I do now, which is heartbreaking because I understand what my mom went through,
Yeah.
and what ultimately allowed her to let go of me and to create that pain in our relationship that was so hard to heal. But now I have a lot more compassion and perspective about what that was.
Yeah. The prologue to your book, so I'm not giving away too much.
No, you can give away anything at this point, whatever you
Well, it
want.
ends with this, you were taken
Yeah,
at the age of 12. And one of the heart-wrenching things in reading about it was you were not aware at the time of the way that your mom was actually dealing with that, the duality of trying to put on the face of the cult face,
yeah,
and then the actual primal mom,
yeah,
who's like, my son,
yeah.
they're coming for my son. And later, I guess you learned that through
My
your
my
siblings.
sister telling me that has been, I mean, I've had a lot of healing to do with my siblings. I mean, the book focuses mostly on my relationship with my mom, whatever. But I mean, it's like I was mad at my mom. My younger siblings, Josh and Noel, they hated me because
Yeah.
they saw what it did to my mom too, right? So I will spare that for a second book, but like healing those relationships has also been a lot.
And it's
But
more ongoing.
and it's still ongoing. And I
Yeah.
would say with my youngest sister Noelle, when she told me what happened after I left, like talk about one of the hardest conversations of my life. Like it broke me to
Yeah.
understand that she's like mom's like scream was like blood curdling.
Yeah.
Like first of all, they're coming for Danny, they're coming for Danny, like screaming,
It was
and
a
then
hard thing to read.
dropping and sobbing, and I'm like that, like I'm like, how is that possible? Like it was so devastating
Yeah.
to understand like what was really going on in the house.
Well, you were both victims of this cult, you and
Yeah.
your mom, and the rest of the crew. How long ago did you learn that from Noelle?
Oh man. Probably 7 or 8 years ago.
And how long ago did you lose mom?
It was right around the same time. Actually, so no, probably about it'll be 10 years losing my mom next September.
Yeah.
So it's been about 10 years. It was right around healing the relationship with my mom, and then she had her stroke, and ongoing healing with Noelle and Josh. It was right around that time. So
What do you think your mom would think of the book?
I think my mom would love it, and she would feel like it gave what we went through a reason. That's what she would say. She would probably say, "Thank you for doing this because it feels like there was a reason it happened now." That would be what she would say.
Yeah, that hits here because I have different journey, but some of that same dynamic with my mom. One of the things I struggled with in writing my memoir was like how honest to be on behalf of loved ones who didn't ask to be.
Yeah.
They didn't sell a book. Like they didn't opt in. Was that something you wrestled with? How do you talk about stuff that involves your family and involves folks that didn't ask to be talked about?
100%. And I would say, despite the fact that I obviously share some big things, particularly around the actions of Stephen Camp, the actions of my father, and some others, I actually feel like I stood strong on the commitments I had at the start of the book, and they were in no particular order. I was going to be kind. I was not doing this because I was angry or because it was a cult expose. I was
Yeah.
going to describe the dynamics, the structure, how the mechanism worked, so that anyone who was in a group like that, part of why I did this is to help and make an impact. If anyone feels like one, they either went through this and they're understanding it, or they maybe
Yeah.
still are, giving perspective of how this stuff worked, not in like a super angry way, but whatever was necessary, the context was going to be shared, but I was going to be kind about it because there's a lot of, I felt even then, and I do now, there is a baby within the bathwater. There are people within the storm. There are at times maybe even some positives, despite that those positives were also misused or abused on another side. So because I felt that, I was going to be kind. The second thing I was going to do was I was going to avoid attributing motive where possible. I was going to say this happened. I wasn't going to say this happened because this person is evil,
Yeah.
or this happened because this person is bad. And there were times where I had to reread after, like, you talk about it, it's transcribed, you see it on paper, you edit, you read it, and you go, no, like, I need to change this because that is not hitting on my North Star.
Yeah.
And the third thing is I wasn't going to tell people stories that weren't my own. And what I will say is, not only is there a lot more that could be told about the collective, but if you had a young woman write her experience of the collective and who the most important figures were, good and bad, in her life, if there were other people in the collective who may come out, and I do believe that my book is not the end of a chapter. I believe it's the beginning of a new one, and I think there's going to be a lot of people who maybe decide that they want to now as well, but those stories were not mine to tell.
Yeah.
And there is other types of things that went down. There's other types of abuse, and so back to your point, there were chapters and sections that were literally cut because I felt like that crosses the line from not being necessary context and too much of this person's story.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I feel like we did a really good job in the end and set out to do what I wanted to do. But there's a lot more that could have been expounded upon. And I feel, I told nothing but the truth in the book, and even to the people who, are made out, or in some ways we're sort of the obstacles or the bad guys in my story for a while.
Yeah.
I would say even in those cases with my dad and Stephen Camp, there were a lot more stories I could have told that I didn't.
Yeah.
I did not go into stuff that I didn't feel was needed. I told the things that I felt explained what helped make me the person I am today.
Yeah.
So that's how I would answer that, even though
Well,
obviously it's intense.
it was clear that you handled it with care. I think you did a good job. That's a hard line to walk, particularly when you know something will be accretive to the story,
Yeah.
right? That'll add to it. It'll
Yeah.
add texture, but it feels like it's over the net.
Yeah.
But it's also information that would be relevant to the reader. It seems like maybe the finest line you had to walk there from my reading of it as just one reader was with your dad, with your biological dad,
Yeah.
where there was maybe some kind of imputing of motive, or you had to say a little bit more there. It's your
Yeah.
dad, and
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
you'll talk a little bit about it here.
No, yeah.
How did you navigate that, and how did the present day relationship with people, whether your dad or otherwise, impact the telling? In other words, did you talk
Yeah.
to people as you were writing it
Yeah.
to kind of see what you missed, or to kind of calibrate and temperature check that unreliable narrator?
Yeah. So, I have a very close uh, friend. He's my uncle by marriage because the cult is awkward. He's in the book as the person who gave me a big hug. My uncle Mike, even though he's not my uncle by blood.
Yeah.
He was someone who I relied a lot on because he not only was 18 years older than me, yet lived the same experience and had even more access to. And in fact, in some ways, not only was what I wrote validated, but in some ways it was helped by understanding the whole picture. There are a couple others that I won't name who also contributed as well in terms of being a sounding board and in some ways to like give me the courage to say the thing and actually no, don't back down on that, or hey, like my interpretation of it was this. That does help me. I'm actually going to change how I'm framing that. And so
Siblings part of that at all, or not really?
teeny bits.
Okay.
Teeny bits. And then, yeah, when it comes to my relationship with my dad, I mean, I also talked to him several times in writing the book and told him like, hey, this is an intense process I'm going through, but I also want you to know in advance before you read it, like nothing I'm sharing changes how I feel about where we've landed in terms of the work we've done to heal our relationship.
What did he say?
And he was very supportive of that. And
Has
the
he
book,
read it?
The book has been very hard for him to read.
No
But
doubt.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But also, I stand by, and I without speaking for him if he was here, like nothing I wrote was untrue,
Right.
and I wasn't trying to unnecessarily say things that other people might say about my dad, but
Yeah.
there's also an understanding that Stephen Camp and my dad were the perpetrators for a lot of young people who were raised in the collective because
Yeah.
they were the two father figures for every child, not just their biological children.
Yeah.
Stephen Camp had none. But what happened in that dynamic, I don't make excuses for or justify my dad or Stephen Camp's behavior.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm beyond forgiveness or in any way don't stand by that. I love that we've been able to talk about and to
Yeah.
heal and come to terms. But the truth is, like, finding that line has made my relationship with my dad difficult again in some ways.
Yeah.
And I'm still quite kind of in the middle of that right now.
When did he see it? Has he read it?
Yeah, he read it back in April.
You sent him a copy.
Yeah.
That
I
was a
sent him
nervous.
an early
That was a
copy. Very,
tough
very,
email to send,
very
right?
nervous.
You send a PDF,
Exactly, a digital.
and you're just like,
yeah, exactly.
and it was basically done at that point.
Yeah, there haven't been many changes.
Okay.
And
And then what happened? Nothing for 2
we've
weeks.
talked about it some.
Okay.
It's my dad is also getting very old, and his health is continuing to decline.
Yeah.
And he and I talked enough about it, and he understood I didn't have a condition on like a desire for him to deal with me about it as much as more than he wanted to. But
Yeah.
I wanted him to understand that I wasn't writing this out of anger. I was writing it because you can't have the payoff mean something to people if you cut the story short.
Totally.
Right? You can't shortchange people on the shit that went down.
Totally.
And then expect them to appreciate the payoff of where you got.
Yeah.
That's hard for people, like obviously if they're in the lane of being the bad guy in someone else's particular book, right?
Yeah.
But to me, if you read also all the way through, like, and see my
Yeah.
general perspective of gratitude, I wouldn't change anything that happened to me
Yeah.
at all. And I really stand by that if you don't want to change the ending of your life, you don't get to cherry pick the middle or the beginning either.
Yeah.
And that is not a way to justify hardship or to apologize for your abusers, but it is the only choice to make because what happened happened and you get to choose why.
Yeah.
And so I can love my dad and appreciate that he made a lot of mistakes and his shortcomings were put on display in the book to help people understand, what it can do for someone when the obstacle is the way and they overcome some stuff. And look, this is hard stuff and I'm still in the middle of it. So,
I saw the Daily Stoic upstairs.
yeah.
By the way, we're in Danny's house, just for
Yeah.
those who are wondering.
Yeah.
The obstacle is the way some will recognize from Stoicism, or maybe Mandalorian, is it? Something like that. This is the way. One of the things that's wild about your book is the amount of gratitude and the lack of animus and anger that you have been able to move beyond those emotions, metabolize them.
Yeah.
How?
Well, I quickly just, said something that I really do mean, which is that we are not what happens to us. We are what we choose to become. Carl Jung. My own version of that could be a combination of if you're not going to change the end game, to use a reference, you don't get to say that the middle game and opening needed to be changed. You have to play the position in front of you.
Yeah.
And if you've done the work and come to terms to be living the most whole experience you feel like you can now, you don't get a time machine, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that if I'm grateful for chess, how can I not have at least some sense of gratitude for what Stephen Camp thought chess could become? Even if there were the reasons that he had, even if, as I said, I don't want to attribute motive, but even if some of his motives in hindsight were clearly, misplaced,
Yeah.
I'm grateful for what he saw in chess and what he saw in me, because one of the things that any kid will talk about is sometimes they go like, well, I became this because my third grade teacher said I was good at math, right? And what's weird is even if the motives of the teacher are not yours to judge because you are not their ultimate maker, it might have an impact in a way that could be positive. And I think that's a weird mindset for people, that sometimes people do bad things and it's the best thing that could have happened to you. And even
Yeah.
crazier, sometimes people do something they thought was good, but it was actually not good for you. And it still turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to you. And that was probably my example. And I also believe that gratitude that you find on the other side of grief is just a different level of empowerment than like
Yeah.
people who, a lot of people walk around saying like live every day like it's your last, but very few actually do, right?
Yeah.
And when I lost my mom the way I did and as quickly as I did, and given everything that had been our relationship that is in the book, and I'm not saying that to sell the book, I'm saying because we can't talk about all of it right now, but I'm
Yeah, of
saying it to someone
course.
who's read it, like it gives you a sense of appreciation for what actually matters, and very rarely is what actually matters holding on to a hot stone. Like very rarely what actually matters in life is drinking poison and expecting other people to feel sick. Like it is a choice to continue to harbor anger and
Yeah.
hatred, and even if it's upsetting to be told that the best thing for you is to find a way to focus on what you can control now,
Yeah.
to breathe serenity and perspective into your being, and to do what you can to take your experience and maybe give to others. The reality is that is the best choice you can make as long as you're
Yeah.
still here. And and so I choose to have that choice.
And was that, when did you make that choice? Were you a normal, angry, aggrieved, totally fucked up, cult refugee, and then dealt with some shit, and then at some point actively chose the process of releasing? Or somehow were you wired to get it out of your body over time? Like, how does someone do that? If I'm sitting
Yeah,
here,
yeah. I
how do I
think
how do I do what you just said?
what I would say too is like, to each their own. I do believe that it's okay to be a person who sometimes finds your balance by hitting the guardrails of
Of
life. I
course.
think that there are those who do that, and like there are some that struggle to be willing to do it, so maybe they take longer to get there because they weren't able to find what the extreme of anger and hatred would really feel like to appreciate that they don't want it. So I'm actually saying it not just for the politically correct answer to say everyone has their own path, but I really do believe that there are
Mhm.
different ways to figure
Of
that out.
course.
For me, I would say part of the thing that surprised so many people, including Eric, about my book was how long I stayed in the collective, how long I continued to tithe despite my awareness or despite the hypocrisy I saw, the hurt that I carried, that
Yeah.
I had now started therapy after my mom had her stroke. And what I would say is like I went through a very short stint of, we'll call it like my atheist peak, where I was angry. This is like all for naught and whatever, it's hard for me to justify anything. That was a very, very short-lived thing that probably I never really believed was the right call, but I
Yeah.
did have a short perspective there. Um, but part of what I was able to do was I was able to carry the lessons of grief from losing my mom while kind of living in the eye of the hurricane. I was
Mhm.
able to start to discern that, hey, this is a cult. That doesn't mean everything about my experience here has to be bad.
Yeah.
I was able to say like my mom has, I mean, to talk about opposing truths, like my mom has died. I wish I could snap my finger and take it back. Yet I'm probably undeniably a better person because of the perspective I now have about grief. How do you come to terms with that? Like, is that me saying I'm happy my mom died? No, right? That's not what I'm saying. I wish my mom was here with me in Utah, but I can't change the past, and I can't deny that I have a perspective about grief and gratitude and relationships and the equity we build there being the only thing that matters, not of the other
Yeah.
that probably I carry deeply with me because I really appreciated what it was like to rebuild and heal a relationship with someone who taught me so much and then lose them like this. Like not bull, right? And so I don't know how to offer the advice other than at some point the what we get out of having perspective, having forgiveness, and sort of the benefits we see of that have to start to kind of outweigh whatever the perceived payoff is that you're getting of being angry. And I think when you start to kind of just look at those things differently,
Yeah.
hopefully you can start to place your chips on the other table slowly but surely, knowing that it's not easy to do.
Yeah. Do you think some of that is because things have gone well for you, like Shauna and this amazing career you've
Mm-hmm.
had, first as a chess player, then as a chess community builder, now with shepherding the game? Or do you think the fact that you took agency of your own story made some of that possible?
It's a great question. It's a fair question, right? I can only answer it through my own lived experience,
Of course.
obviously, right? I
Well, we
think that
already know you're an unreliable narrator, so we're
exactly
good.
right, and so I don't have to
By the way,
keep.
kind of an thing that that person said. I
Yeah,
don't buy that,
I
but
think it's
it seemed like
okay.
it was meant benevolently, I
I
guess.
think it was meant benevolently, and also
Who is this reliable narrator of their own lives? I still haven't met that person yet.
yeah, exactly. It's you can only share from your perspective,
Of
right?
course.
Exactly. But I think what he was trying to say though was that it makes it more of a page turner because you get the feeling throughout that
Mm,
like that there's also like a mystery going on. There's a
totally.
memoir, there's the history of chess, there's this, but there's almost like a mystery of watching your character unfold. So he meant it
I
in a
totally
page
felt that
turning
way.
way. And I
Yeah.
think whereas like there are some where you listen to their audible or you read it and he's like you already feel very quickly like we're gonna get to the ending and we kind of know how this person's gonna feel about it. So that,
Yeah.
that was kind of his implication. Anyway, on the one hand, it's probably a question that's good for other people about someone like me because I feel like very early on I was living my life with the values of what I was trying to build before I had the material means to have the excuse. And
Hmm.
what I mean is like I really do believe that for whatever reason, maybe because I was tricked mentally into thinking that the teaching was the most important thing on the planet and had it abused and used against me, I had this like inner sort of sense of like my own integrity checklist where I was like buying into the way to live by the golden rule
Hmm.
and to never say no and to be generous for people and to try to make my marriage work despite my wounds, even though in some ways like I had a lot of evidence to say, well, the teachers never did it, and they were super Why was I
Yeah.
doing? I don't know why. I was kind of brainwashed into like trying to be a good boy despite my damage, and maybe that actually helped me in the long run to like to make my way through the storm. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But I will say that I think it is important to live by your values and live by what you believe is right and good. You know, obviously, long before you have the means to say like, oh, now I can say that I believe that my life was good because I made it right. I would
Yeah.
say that if you talk to other people about me, they would say that. I think I was a bit of a crazy person trying to keep
Yeah.
something in the baby bucket versus the bathwater bucket, and I do believe that my choice to do that, despite all the weird dominoes, was part of what built the success I have. So I can't answer it other than you can tell it's a little bit of a hard question for me to answer
It's
because
how,
I don't want to sound like I'm saying that there weren't people who were truly disadvantaged by the collective,
of course.
who I believe people who had it worse than me, who are forever going to be facing an uphill battle because of what they experienced.
Yeah.
And so in no way am I trying to be trite or dismissive of that.
Yeah.
At the same time, like I have to believe, and I do believe that making the best out of the hand I was being given
Yeah.
was something I was doing long before chess.com hit a boom because of a global pandemic and because of a Netflix show.
Yeah. And I think you did a very good job of addressing that in the epilogue where you basically said, I'm not a person that somehow got through this. I'm
Yep.
just as damaged in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I think the way that we process it matters. And my answer to the question is that the kind of person that is trying to tell the best possible story they can about
Yeah.
their own life is the kind of person that makes the micro decisions over time
Well,
that lead to maybe having you get to the best possible end game you can, I guess, is the goal, right?
Yep.
You're trying to, to hit the chess analogy, you're trying to play that hand that you're dealt as best you can, and it's clear that you were doing that along
Yeah,
the way.
and I really do feel that I was, again, I was also super up. I was abusing drugs and alcohol. I was cruel to my wife at times. I was a wounded person who was making his way through by wounding people. Again, I'm also, I've learned from my wife. I can hear Shauna in my head saying like, "Be kinder to yourself." I was
Yeah.
a hurt kid who
Yeah.
got married super young and didn't know how to deal with the fact that I was abused and all these
Yeah.
things. So I did the best I could, and I like what you said there too, because in no way am I pretending that I was perfect or
Yeah.
at all, even now, not a very damaged person. I'm still learning to deal with my own anxiety on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, yeah, I do believe that making the choice to attempt at least to make the best out of my outcome was something I was doing long before the outcome started to look good. And
Yeah.
I think to your point, I made the chess analogy about if you're not going to change the end game, can't change the middle and the opening. I think that we all want to be heroes in our own story if we can, but
Yeah.
the only way to be the hero is to do the hard work of what do you do with the obstacle? We all want to be an alchemist. And let me explain this because the best stories, all the stories that resonate throughout history, whether they are real, whether they are legend, whether they are a little bit of myth added on top of something that was true, or whether they are pure miracle, they are all involving someone performing alchemy out of the obstacles they face, which is when you are faced with a bad thing, you have three options. Reject the bad thing. Decide the bad thing isn't for you. No matter what it's doing, you can be angry about it. You can say it's not for me. The second option is like, we'll call it like mental or spiritual Tai Chi. You can allow the obstacle to pass through.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it for what it is and say, it's not affecting me anymore. For some people, they try to put things in the past and it continues to haunt them in the rear view.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, maybe, I'm not judging that, maybe you truly can put something in the past and it is behind. So
Yeah.
those are the first two options. The third option is that you are better because of the obstacle. You literally turn the gun into a flower.
Mm-hmm.
You literally turn the bullet into a hot dog. You literally perform everything everywhere all at once, the movie where you turn something hard into the reason you got good at the thing.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you are performing alchemy with the obstacles faced in your life, you don't get to dismiss the obstacle. The obstacle is the way, and it's because of the hardship you faced that you were able to create something out of nothing.
The beauty is in the brokenness.
Exactly. And so I know that was a bit of a rant, but I'm really
Yeah.
serious. I've thought a lot about this for myself. I've thought
Yeah.
a lot about it just in terms of making sense of what I've been through and how to help others. But I think that the stories that truly inspire us are like you can even make it religious, like water into wine. Someone did some wild stuff, or like
Yeah.
someone was able to perform and do something because of the obstacles they faced on the way.
Yeah.
Not in spite of, not even they went around, but it was the obstacle that transformed you.
Yeah.
And so we all want to be the alchemist of our own story, but no one likes to say the obstacle is the way while they're in the middle of the they like to say it after, right? And so I think that you have to find a way to look at whatever hardship you have and ask, how am I transforming this situation? And
Yeah.
I that is the only way that I can kind of answer that question.
There's a Chinese parable that my wife, who lived in China for 8 years, tells me about, where it's called Sai Wang Sherma. I'm butchering the pronunciation, but it's about a
Yeah.
guy who loses his best horse.
Okay.
And then he goes to his dad and he says, "Dad, I've lost my best horse. Woe is me." And his dad says, "How do you know it's not a blessing?" Effectively. And
Yeah.
then the Mongols invade, and every man with a good horse goes to war, and they all die except for him.
Yeah.
And he goes to his dad and he says, "Dad, you were so right. I survived. What a blessing." And he goes, "How do you know it's not a curse?" Right. And then he goes back to town and he's the only man in town now.
Yeah.
And it turns into a whole quagmire of problems.
Yeah.
And he keeps going back to his dad and the story keeps looping, and everything good is bad and everything bad is good. And there's many stories like this, I guess, across the
Yeah.
cultures, but what makes it beautiful is that it's become a saying in China when you come to someone with good or bad news, Sai Wang Sherma, which basically means, how do you know what you're experiencing isn't the opposite of the way you're experiencing it right now?
Yeah.
So I come to you and I say, "Oh, Danny, tough news. I just got this diagnosis of, some terrible disease." And rather than saying like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that," you kind of wistfully say, "Sai Wang Sherma," like, this might be a gift.
Yeah.
Like now in the present, or
Yeah.
another saying, the gift is in the wound. But when you're being wounded,
Yeah.
it's hard to say
feel
what
good.
what a blessing this is. You mentioned this concept of hero of the story. I loved it in the acknowledgments when you said the hero of your story is Shauna. Tell
Yeah.
me about why, and did you just get lucky meeting her, or how did it come to be that she showed up in your life and went through some of these difficult things, and how have you been able to reciprocate?
Yeah. I meant it. Shauna is the real hero of my story and will always be. And I would even say my mom, there's a reason the book was dedicated to her, right?
Yeah.
I think my relationship with women transforming and evolving because of what I was able to come to with my mom and heal that relationship ultimately saved my marriage, and then my marriage saved my life in that
Yeah.
way. And I think how did she come to be? I don't know. She gets uncomfortable when I talk about it in this
Yeah.
way. But I think that
Shauna, tune out if you're hearing
yeah,
this.
yeah. I'm so grateful that she had her own unique obstacles. Her parents also divorced when she was very young.
Yeah.
Very similar to my dad. Her dad left her mom to marry the second oldest daughter of the cult leaders. Her mom didn't stick around. They fled back to Chicago.
Yep.
And it wasn't until many years later that, because of circumstances in her mom's current marriage, which was a very abusive one, that she moved back to the collective. As I kind of said in the book, through Shauna's permission, because we both sort of surmised this, that it was probably her best option, given that Stephen Camp was probably the only more powerful guy to get rid of this guy,
Yeah.
right? And he did his job from that perspective. And now Shauna's back in the collective. We start having a thing, and ultimately would get together. One of the things my wife had because of that journey was she had an appreciation for both sides of the coin in a way that it both saw the forest through the trees, in terms of she was immediately able to recognize the parts of it that were occult.
Yeah.
And even though it took her years and years to slowly incept and kind of deal with someone who was the cult golden boy, who would have defended it to death to kind of help him come to terms with it, and that it was super fucked up that he was taken from his mom, that this was not okay, all the brainwashing that had been done to me, that my mom had abused me and all these things. I don't write about much of it in the book, but a big part of the brainwashing was that I had been told that my mom had physically abused me and all these things. And so all of this stuff that she was kind of like, doesn't smell right, and she was able to slowly help me find kind of the light.
Yeah.
But on the other side were a lot of other young people, as they came to their own as they came to, and as they started to have their own rebellion against the collective and wanted their own lives, all righteously so,
Hmm.
they did so in a lot of ways with a lot of anger, a lot
Yeah.
of contempt, a lot of heartache and rage, which I understand to anyone
Yeah.
listening to this, right? That there were reasons to be upset.
Of course.
But finding yourself on the extreme of hatred is a journey. Once you grab a pendulum, that's my only advice to people when it comes to trying to have perspective. When you grab a pendulum and let go here, where does it go? Does it go back to balance?
Mm-mm.
No, no, no. It goes to the other side. And so the moment you open that can of
Yeah.
hatred, like it's a journey to get back. And so I think Shauna also very much appreciated the good parts of community, the parts of
Yeah.
our world that are broken. But she saw social media coming before it happened. And it was
Hmm.
like people need community, people need support, they
Yeah.
need people in their lives who know what's going on with them.
Yeah.
And so she saw the part of it that you can't have your cake and eat it too, where a lot of the other young people didn't. It was like you can't want people there for you in all your most dire needs, yet not have a little bit of what comes with being there for them when they need you in their most dire needs, right? There's a
Yeah.
bit of a trade-off that people don't like to talk about in community. You want people to be close with you. Do
Yeah.
you want to do the work to support people when they need you to be close to them?
Yeah.
That's something that our world is like struggling with. And my
Yes.
wife, I just feel like was like a genius in this space because she both saw it for what it was, but she didn't pull the wheel too hard the other way. She was able to create space for us to like come to terms with what it was, grieve both of the fact that our grieve the fact that both of our mothers ended up dying young,
Yeah.
yet not run away from the collective despite knowing that there was a lot of bad shit. She didn't have to like in heartache or anger rebel because she also saw that a small school was doing a lot of good for a lot of kids
Yeah.
despite the dysfunction of the overbearing leaders. She saw that communal living is something that the world probably needs more of,
Yeah.
not less of, right? Because she was raised in rich New Trier, North Shore,
Yep.
Chicago, where there were a
Yep.
lot of broken marriages, a lot of bullshit happening behind the scenes. She's like the amount of moms that I knew early on that were abusing opioids, and I'm not trying to call out anybody in the area, but this was the she saw, right? So she's like dealing with like broken and lying materialism in the
Yeah.
world and seeing the benefits of the community. And so to answer the reason she was the hero of my story, along with, I guess the subtitle, which is how I feel the game of chess gave me an education about the world that also paid dividends down the road. She had a balanced view in a way that was really needed for someone who has struggled with balance. Like I have really struggled
Yeah.
with that, and she gave me that.
Man, the idea of someone who was able to not overcorrect.
Yeah,
God, do we need more of that
yeah,
in our country right now?
yeah.
Right?
No,
It's
seriously.
to kind of put your hand on the tiller and say, not everything about that was bad.
Yep,
A lot of terribleness to that.
yep.
Where does that come from for her, do you think?
Oh man,
How does
I don't know.
we live in such a polarized time. I'm just wondering if you can share some words of wisdom from being Shauna's husband around how does someone develop the perspicacity,
Yep,
the self-control, the grace to
yep,
say not everything has to be the opposite of the other thing.
yeah. Well, I think that she would say like she probably found herself being calmer because she saw her, and maybe this is where her mom gave her the gift that she did. She saw her mom operating in a lot more extremes.
Yeah.
And without full context as a kid, when your mom runs away from your dad, you're like, why did we do this extreme thing?
Yeah.
Why am I now cut off from my dad? Which ultimately it was the cult and her dad that cut
Yeah.
them off, not
Yeah.
not her mom. And she
Yeah.
didn't know that, right? I think that it's weird how we have these things and then you could talk about, I don't know, maybe she's an old soul. I don't know. But she went through these things and had a perspective of maybe I don't have to act in extremes. And
Yeah.
her mom had her own mental health challenges, and
Yeah.
her mom was definitely manic, if not undiagnosed something.
Yeah.
And Shauna, as the oldest daughter, bore the brunt of that. And so, if I'm speaking for her without telling more of her story than she would want me to, the oldest daughter of a really broken-hearted, abused, cult-surviving mother who had to operate in extremes to save her kids, at least from her perspective, probably left an impression on Shauna that she wanted to find a different way to tackle things, which in the end ended up being very good for whatever would happen with us because I think she's just a thoughtful mover. She
Yeah.
just takes the time and I think it's also something that, you know, if you do the work to heal yourself and you're no longer making everyone in your life your abuser, your perpetrator, the thing that triggers you, I mean, I could go on a rant right now. There's a reason my wife has become a therapist because we have so many opinions of where the mental health industry can lose its way. When you
Yeah.
teach people all the time to just set up boundaries and avoid triggers, oh, that's a really good way to avoid anything that would challenge you to grow, instead of
Yeah.
learning how to evolve your relationship with the thing, learning how to diagnose your own choice to engage in the relationship at that level versus reframing it. There are so many other ways to tackle this crosses my boundaries or this or that.
Yeah.
And like Shauna would be like, if you're making someone your abuser or
Yeah.
making them, someone who's crossing your boundaries consistently, you are also complicit in the relationship versus evolving it. Talk about performing alchemy.
Yeah.
And I mean, Shauna and I have both experienced in our lives that we changed a relationship with a person and the person didn't change anything about their behavior. But
With your moms.
with our moms, with our dads in different ways, and with other people. And so I think when you can perform alchemy on a relationship, something that you don't leave in an unmovable box, you find a way to evolve your perspective. I think it gives you a little more patience when something is bothering you next. You don't immediately put in the bucket of this thing that's bothering me needs to be removed. Instead, this thing that bothers me might be an opportunity for me to reflect on why it's bothering me.
Yeah.
And I think that that was kind of her approach, and she continues to have that. And yeah.
When her book comes out, is going to be
Yeah.
called Light
It
Squares.
should be. It should be.
Tell me about the title. I love the title.
Yeah,
Tell me about. I love origin stories of titles.
Yeah. So first of all, one of the earliest titles, because I shared the story about loving chess from searching for Bobby Fischer, was searching for Danny Rensch, and I'm like, we can't do that. That's not a good title. That is. Plus, most people won't get it. It sounds so narcissistic. Although I was like finding myself in the journey. So that was an early
It
title.
could have worked, but Dark
Yeah.
Squares is
Dark Square's
on a
better.
different level.
And so the editor who was at Hachette, who ultimately won me over at the last minute of this interview, which he really did. And I'm going to say this real quick because you've been in that role. I actually had a higher financial offer with a different one of the major publishers. So I went with Hachette because of this editor.
Yeah.
And because I believed that he was going to do right by the story.
Yeah.
And so he won me over, and he was the actual one who named the book.
Yeah.
He's no longer with Hachette, but I guess I can just say his name. Sometimes I always get worried about it, but he would probably love the credit. Ben Adams.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, Ben. Love you, Ben. But Ben came up with the title Dark Squares.
Yeah.
And then there were a lot of people who contributed to the subtitle. Because there were all kinds
of course.
ways. A subtitle can be very hit or miss. It
Yeah.
can feel unnecessary, but a lot of memoirs have them.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy that we landed on the one that we did, knowing that there were other iterations, because when I've been asked to explain the subtitle, sometimes you know something's right where you answer it without even knowing you had the answer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, chess saved my life because it gave me an education.
Yeah.
And I believe that in our world, all forms of bigotry and ultimately your ability to discriminate is based
Yeah.
on your lack of understanding of other people's cultures,
Yeah.
other people's ways of thinking, other people's ways of viewing and living. And chess is a game that transcends the barriers of race, religion, culture, age, gender.
Of course.
Chess is a thing that actually does break down those barriers. And what I've learned with time is that I'm so lucky to be fighting for a game like this. I feel so lucky that we are playing a truly infinite mission here, because chess is so good for people. And if we consider education to be more than the academics, more than reading, writing, arithmetic,
Yeah.
what is education? It is travel, it's food, it's music, it's games, right? And when you understand other people's games, other people's travel and their food and their culture, which a lot of chess players do because they travel the world,
Yeah.
I think it just makes you a more thoughtful, educated person, and maybe a little bit less judgmental, maybe a little more open to new ideas. And I think chess gave me, even though I didn't know it at the time, chess was planting the seeds of an education in both things that the world had right and that my cult had wrong,
Yeah.
and also maybe things that the world had wrong and that the collective had right. That I think that was where the game gave me some perspective, along with, my wife, who truly, was the hero.
Do you think you would have become as good at it if you weren't in those cult conditions around chess that Stephen Camp created?
Again, it's kind of like asking,
It's the counterfactual.
Yeah, we don't have a time travel machine, but I would say that probably not. Just given that the reason I got good is because I was good, and then he liked that I was good.
Yeah.
So that became a self-fulfilling prophecy of my obsession, my willingness to commit myself to the levels that I did, ultimately to levels that ended up breaking me in a lot of ways, and certainly broke my relationship with my mom. But I don't think I get good at chess unless Stephen Camp is giving me the accolades and I'm not experiencing sort of the spiritual kudos. Now, again, because we don't have a time travel machine, maybe my mom stays in Colorado when I'm 5, right? This happens, you'll read it. And this was the time when she was really put to the task to kind of reflagellate herself and re-sign the covert contracts of the cult.
Yeah.
And so when she came back, she was more loyal than ever. But let's say she stays in Colorado. We never moved back to the collective when I'm 5. Maybe I learned chess in kindergarten, and maybe something else happens. And who
How
knows
old
what
were you
that...
when you picked it up?
I didn't learn until I was 9, 10. So it was much, much later that I learned.
Yeah.
So, there's obviously weird sliding doors in the multiverse where things happen. But I again, I would answer maybe it doesn't matter because I don't regret. I'm grateful for that experience because even though it was hard and I can't justify the motives or actions, the fact that it happened the way it did ultimately also put me on the chess.com path, which if I had to say all things considered, I'm grateful that happened, that for whatever reason, the ways it did, when my playing career fell apart and chess.com came along, I feel like I've been able to make more of an impact and make more of a difference and provide in a different way because of that, even if there was many parts of me that fought it every step of the way.
Yeah.
So who knows, right?
I'm glad you didn't learn at 5 because then maybe you would be the best player in the world and we would have missed out on almost one of the best players in the world being so committed to the community of chess. Because what strikes me about chess and talking about some of the guys behind you, it is a pretty solo, lone wolf kind of a game.
Yeah.
Where, for better for worse, people's jobs are to be in it for themselves. I don't begrudge it. Carlos Alcaraz is focused on Carlos Alcaraz.
Right.
What makes you different is you actually care about other people who play chess, and you have this vision early on that you want to have it not be as such a messed up ecosystem. And did you organize 1,200 chess events or something?
Which is crazy.
Which doesn't make any sense to me because long before you had this really cool role at the chess enterprise that's powering the whole ecosystem, you were willing to be on the ground like as a community organizer, kind of. And our title sponsor, my company Pi, what we care about is building community in person. Tell us about some of those days of being boots on the ground.
Yep.
Before you became Danny Rensch, now take us back. Like, why did you care? And what did you do about that caring? Like, how did you get that ball rolling for yourself?
Yep. I would definitely say, just like my book doesn't tell the Hollywood story of I went through all these hardships. Maybe I was a little bit mean to my wife, snapped my fingers, we're in a great marriage. I share a lot about the actual struggles of that and finding myself on the other side of misogyny, of just generally having a lack of respect for women and being honest in order to help and rebuild. So I'm saying that to say on this side, I wouldn't say that it was like an easy snap of the fingers to overcome my own sort of egocentric goals.
Of course.
Especially because a lot of my spiritual self-worth as ordained by the cult was wrapped up in that. So that was a deconstructing process for those who want to read about it. And it led to me abusing alcohol and opioids for a while. And so that was hard. But what I will say, the thing that surprised me is what I didn't know while I was, focused on my own chess is that when I first started teaching chess, and then that led to teaching chess in groups and others, it genuinely filled my cup to make other people better than it did my own. And I didn't know that was going to happen. And so I didn't know that I was going to be more of like a communicator at heart, if that's what I ultimately became. I would say a teacher at first, and then as the platform and the medium that evolves with time. Now we're all in short form, right? But long form, whatever. Actually, long form content's coming back. I think people really love these types of long conversations.
Don't they already love it?
They do, but I think in the trends we're seeing, I think this is a really great time for people to really be authentic, to stop the bull. And share everything. And I think this is the type of conversation people want. So long form is coming back. It's not just the short form highlights. So, but whatever the medium is of communicating, I think I found that that filled my cup more. And I didn't know that was going to be the case. And even though I still spent several years in the focused, egocentric in my teens, whatever, before health problems, and then ultimately that, I was already like secretly, I think, enjoying the idea that that I would like serve the community through my knowledge of chess. And that's perspective I can see.
How old were
And
you
then
when that started to dawn on you?
16, 17. I
Okay.
remember my first chess lesson with Shauna. By the way, he's now our director of Fair Play Operations, works for chess.com. Shout out to Sean. Love you, man. Which is its own wild story. But
So
Sean was
cool.
my first student. He was 9 and I was 16.
I love that.
So that happened. And then again, talk about another weird obstacle that you perform alchemy on and become something better. Stephen Camp presents the obstacle of he wants to make money and he has this really talented chess team. He's going to start a chess coaching business of running tournaments. I end up being the poster child for the reason people will come play because he doesn't
Yeah.
want to change my playing career yet. He's still obsessed with me becoming world champion.
Yeah.
But if I play, then people will come play because I was the All-American. I was the top-rated guy.
Yeah.
So it's like an egocentric backdoor into caring about this brand and I cared about it for him too, and it was whatever. But all of a sudden, I eventually took over this American Chess Events teaching business.
Yeah.
Was very excited too and proud of what we had built, and so suddenly I backdoored my way into having a community of people who love these chess tournaments, and I wanted to make them even better than Stephen Camp had them running. I wanted to do everything. So it was like a weird path to appreciate. Now I'm super grateful because with everything we've done at chess.com, I have a very good understanding of what it takes to do that, to get thousands of people in a chess room
Yeah.
and to make them feel appreciated and to provide a quality experience.
Yeah.
And then as content has evolved, it's been easier for me to go, okay, well, even as we evolve what we're doing here with great entertainment, you can't disrupt the players here. We should still do this. Oh, a great fan zone would be this. You know what I always wish I had at my tournaments? Like people going over games. And so you kind of end up with this holistic view of the diamond. Eric and I like to use this phrase of like
Yeah.
really appreciating the full view of a problem.
Yeah.
And so I think that we accidentally had a couple people who were running chess.com who really understood the full spectrum
Yeah.
of what chess could be. And even if Eric and I valued different faces of the diamond or had different perspectives of it,
Yeah.
we saw the whole thing. And so through conversation, through disagreements at times, we were always able to come to the best way to serve the chess world,
Yeah.
given the current situation.
What are some hot takes that you have about building community? What are some things that you've learned that maybe cut against the grain, or if I'm hearing this and I'm trying to build community in my own way, whether
Yeah.
in real life, digitally, I'm just getting something going, I'm just getting something percolating. What should I know from someone like you that's done it?
Hot
From
take.
yeah,
Hot take is word of mouth is still the most important thing. No matter what they try to lie to you about with CPM, performance marketing, or pay for the right exposure of click, your product has to be the best because word of mouth will still win. And if I told you there were dozens of other places to play chess, people go, what? Like chess.com is synonymous with the
Yeah.
game and the app. So and I have a couple others to add to this, but the first one really is that like in a world where we are told that through the algorithms, through the content, do this funny thing and you'll go viral. So much of that is way more short-lived than you think. People remember you for a second and they forget you tomorrow. They really, really do. The only thing that wins in the end is the human-to-human endorsement of I use this app and you should join me here. I use this freshener spray. I use this. And every time we are faced with, I call it the lie of performance marketing, I love that we come back to our roots. And there's been weird ways that we try to dabble with, getting attention, not in the chess community, but maybe in a gaming community where we think there's chess enthusiasts up over there playing that game and they don't know it yet. So we can try to get exposure. But in the end, don't underestimate that I believe the human connection is still driving everything. And human beings' endorsements and their validation of it to someone else is like the more important thing. And so now how does that translate to online? People talk, they share, and they give feedback. And ultimately, you have to do right by the community or the community will go elsewhere. And I think we actually had we were blessed with the fact that we don't own chess. So every time someone has come in and been like, why don't you guys outsource more support to this country? Why don't you guys like You know how many millions of dollars you could get if you just put a Ford logo on the middle of the chessboard with the scale of impressions you're getting? But we have protected the quality and this in the the sanctity of the game over these monetary opportunities, and it has allowed the community to continue to choose us even when we've become the man. I was even told by someone in sports business, and this was the best compliment ever. He's like, given your guys' market share, I am shocked by the level of positive brand feelings people have about your company. Because what do people say when they talk about Amazon or when they talk about Walmart?
Yeah.
Most of the time, even people who use it are like shitting on it to some
Yeah.
degree. And he was like, it's really a testament to what you guys have done to serve the pillars and to actually keep the mission on task.
Yeah.
Before that was a buzzworthy term. Because the community will always find its way to the best experience and the best product.
Yeah.
And I think you have to do that over all performance incentives, over any other type of thing. That has to be the main focus. And then the last thing I'll say is my version of doing the right thing was shared in the book, which is build the best thing for the community. Let them talk about it. Don't try to guide them toward like, no, you can't say in our forums that you don't like our puzzles. Hey, don't no, like let them talk about it. Let them share and then win by acknowledging and validating and improving. And the last thing we did that became, the pillar of our success when the boom happened was when we were faced with the existential question of are we going to pay for click-throughs and give the money to Facebook before it was Meta, or are we going to allow the door to be more open? Let creators, instead of us trying to get more traffic from Facebook, why don't we let creators have our traffic? When we first did this, it was against all business advice at the time. We literally put a window to YouTube on the fucking checkout page. The funnel became a door to larger websites than our own because what we understood was that we didn't own chess and that YouTube and Facebook and the social media explosion that was happening was something we could either start throwing money into a black box or we could allow it to be the truth, which is people are going to have their own relationship with the game wherever they are. And in the end, if that relationship, we don't get to determine it because we're not going to dominate them on the funnel the whole way. If they decide their relationship is to become a chess player or to become a chess improver, which is our goal because then they subscribe, we will have the best product. So in the end, all roads will lead to Rome. This was a huge gamble, but it was the one that led to the chess boom. It led to the creator economy where we had, because what it allowed us to do is not just be everywhere all at once when the boom came with Queen's Gambit. It also built the brand affinity that I said we now have despite being the market share leader because the creators know that we did right by them and we continue to, that we actually allow our users to openly leave our site. Go watch on Twitch. Go watch on YouTube. Go watch on anywhere people are streaming. We're not even going to pick the winner of the social media sites. We're going to help you grow a brand on our back. And then as you slowly inspire people to get better, they will come home.
Yeah.
They will eventually come home. And that gamble, while it sounds right in hindsight because people know these stars, was actually a huge risk and was met with pushback internally when I was like, look.
From Eric?
Not from Eric, actually.
He saw the other side of the diamond.
I can call him out now because he joked that he wanted a chapter in the book. It was Brennan. Brennan was the one who was really against it. Brennan was our de facto CMO at the time. He might have even had the title. His titles evolved with different growth stuff. But Brennan really, really didn't like it. His job was to focus on the funnel.
Yeah.
And he was like, how in the world is it a good idea to put an embed, which is what it is, a small little player of a video, of a live stream, on the most trafficked chess page in the world, knowing that you can click a hyperlink and leave our site. You're out of your mind.
Because that person can do it anyway.
Exactly.
Right? They can do it anyway.
And because it was an early adoption of what we now understand in the play, watch, play cycle that Riot has touted for many years, and I'm not taking that away from them at all. But we were doing the same thing. We just weren't as popular as League of Legends, which was play, watch, play. Everybody will play for a while. You will fall in love either because your habits change, you lose too many games, you get married, you go to college. At some point, you will see the game again, and that will re-inspire you to play. So what we have to make sure we control or win is that when people decide to play, our product is the best.
Yeah.
And that they'll keep coming back. And that the evidence has been there.
Yeah.
And then it also ended up being a big part of this huge boom because then when the Queen's Gambit happened, if we had been so focused on our site and not built the creator economy,
Yeah.
then Gotham Chess, Levi Rosman on YouTube, Hikaru Nakamura, the Botez sisters, the Chess
Yeah.
Bras, so many others, they don't become a massive top of funnel for us.
Totally.
And now we have an amazing symbiotic relationship with the creators, because the creators, as part of an affiliate program,
Yeah.
we have one of the most lucrative influencer affiliate programs you could have. It pays
Yeah.
millions of dollars because they're getting a percentage of people who go premium. And they're not even like, they're not salesmen, they're just doing their thing.
Yeah.
Crushing it. They're making money on YouTube, but anyone who finds us through them, they get a small piece, and everyone's happy in the ecosystem.
And they're using chess, right?
they're using chess.
Like on their stream.
Yep.
And like for me, the big accelerant of playing chess is watching Gotham,
There you go.
who I've gotten to spend some time with now, thanks to Eric. And that virtuous cycle, you understood that
Yep.
at a time when that was a little contrarian.
Yeah.
And you were willing to go from being, bigger in share, to seeing that come down as more and more attention boomed.
Yep.
And that strikes me as a little analogous to your decision of, at some point I'm going to give up on trying to be number one and try to build community.
Yep.
So it's kind of fun to see that.
Well, no, and sorry, it
Parallel
was
there.
a long answer because that was your original question, was how did I, well, I guess you were asking, how did I learn to appreciate community, and then what were some hot takes? To finish that, I would say word of mouth is more powerful than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Performance marketing is still, virality is less important than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Let people dog on you and actually look in the mirror instead of trying to control the narrative of your brand.
Yeah.
And lastly, like, if you do right by the community will do right by you. And like we learned that and saw it with the creators. And I think whatever the analogy is to your own department, I just think that that's the experience I can speak to. I think that it's such a slippery slope to be buying eyeballs and buying loyalty,
course.
whether through a click or through any other type of paid performance program.
Yeah.
And I think that it's also, I would argue, against the ethos of what human beings want.
Yeah.
They want their friend to believe in the thing, so they do the thing too.
If you do right by the community will do right by you. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yep.
Let's talk about your partnership with Eric real quick
Yeah.
as we close out. Have you guys ever disagreed about something?
I mean, all the
And how do you, it seems from the outside like your partnership's kind of magical.
yeah.
Is that true? How do you navigate conflict? What's the biggest furthest apart you've ever been or felt?
Yeah.
How'd you get back? Tell me about the partnership.
Yeah, I mean, Eric and I see each other every day,
Mhm.
Unless someone's traveling. We exercise together every morning, and then we often see each other again if there's something going on, whether it's work related or whether it's family or whatever.
Mhm.
So I've joked that I've been married to my wife for 20. I've been married to Eric for 18 years, and
Two pretty good partners.
we're pretty good partners. That doesn't mean we don't disagree. And
Right.
I've said it before, I'll say it again.
Well, it means you kind of have to disagree,
You
right?
have to disagree to have
Yeah.
a healthy partnership,
Yeah.
I think. And agreement and commitment are not the same thing.
Yeah.
You can be committed to the same goals and the same ideals. Even in a marriage, this works. Like, you're both committed to safe and happy children.
Yeah.
You might disagree on the means to get there. You're both
Yeah.
bringing your own experiences. You both have your own, both damage and positive traits.
So how do you decide who gets to decide? I mean, it's a beautiful idea. Agreement and commitment are different things.
Yeah. Well, I think that, lucky for me and Eric, we've both had very different subject matter expertise, so we do tend to defer.
Mhm.
If Eric feels very passionate about something on the content media side, I would say he gets his way more than I get my way, because he's the CEO and he is the original co.
And you're okay
the
with
original
that.
founder. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would actually say that Eric has been such a helpful partner for me in so many ways, because
Yeah.
I am someone who finds their way more through extremes.
Yeah.
And you can't always do that in business. And the fact that Eric has had such his own unique journey, right? As
Yeah.
he would share being laughed out of VC rooms, ultimately became the biggest blessing for chess.com.
Yeah.
The fact that he had to be so bottom line focused
Yeah.
so much early on, I think really shaped the ethos of his character and the culture he wanted to build. Because of that, he has been someone who's been a bit of a popping Danny's balloons. But I will acknowledge I'm someone who needs somebody to pop my balloons.
Yeah.
Because
What do you mean by that? Popping Danny's balloons?
when you're a people pleaser, because of my own both damages and strong suits, often our traumas also become our strong suits. When you're a people pleaser, you can be a little bit more, adept to letting the tail wag the dog at times. Even if you ultimately would have come to that answer through making a mistake, he's been someone who's helped me not have to do the thing to see to the end of the situation at
Yeah.
times. And I think he has been just very practical and very bottom line driven, which was frankly what chess needed.
Yeah.
Because chess, I think, has had too many people thinking it's really close to being ready on TV or it's really close to being this. And we have developed a strategy of recognizing that if you see all the facets of the diamond, you can't in good conscience go forward with something you love and believe in. I'm a very passionate person without considering the risk reward of whether it doesn't work out. And
Yeah.
I think it's allowed us to stay a little more balanced.
Mhm.
And I'm saying all that to like say that this is the part of Eric that I love and is why he is the leader of our company, and the culture that he has set there has kept us focused. And at the same time, I would think that Eric would say that because I was such a subject matter expertise and because I'm the one who I grew up with Hikaru, not Eric. I'm the one who's in the DMs with Magnus all the time. Like I'm the one with the relationships with all of these players.
Yeah.
He also trusts that I know what's best ultimately for my side of the house.
Yeah.
And so, as I became like the face of the company, and there were many times where people thought I was the CEO, right? Because
Yeah.
people didn't know how hands-on he was. And we were like, he was joking. There was an active time where he like referred to me. He's like, Danny's the co-CEO. But at some point we thought of the chief chess officer title, which he came up with, which was a way for me to like focus on the area of the house that I think he does defer to, even if he disagrees.
Yeah.
I give my very, very passionate feedback on product and engineering roadmaps, even if he disagrees with me.
Yep.
I can do that. I think that
Do
because
you give it in the public channels or to Eric?
oh yeah,
behind
for
the
sure.
scenes?
No.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
we are very
Transparent.
there are many times where we joke that, don't worry everybody, mommy and daddy are fighting. And it's good. I think that we've told other people to be transparent and to not be afraid to hash things out, so we lead by example.
Yeah.
In that regard. And yeah, it's been interesting at scale, because at scale, no matter how many times you tell people that we're mommy and daddy and you can trust us, you also acknowledge we're not a family anymore, right?
Yeah.
At some point,
Sports
you have
team.
to stop using that terminology, because the truth is you're not a family. You're more like a team.
Yeah.
And here's the funny thing that's a good distinction. Good teams treat each other like family,
Yeah.
but they're not family.
Yeah.
And so there is a distinction where we can have a really great culture. People can feel really great and treated well and have the space and the autonomy to live their life, not work to live. They can work to live, not live to work, right?
Yeah.
But they can also acknowledge they do that for the team's greater good, and
Yeah.
they know that we are not family. They have their own
Yeah.
families, right? And that's been a growing thing for us as the company has expanded.
I was thinking about that as I was watching America's Team, the Dallas Cowboys special,
Yeah.
because Michael Irvin talked about it like family. Well, I think what's so special about you and Eric is the fact that your star does shine so bright that it feels like you are the person carrying the chess torch, and the CEO is cheering that on.
Yeah.
Right, and it's very unique. I can't think of a single other company that's like that.
I mean, Eric. I'll just end on this, and I'll just say that Eric is the most amazing person, because he truly wants to help everyone become the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
Like, and it is so rare in this world, right? Where like he would consider his best version of his self, his highest calling is creating the space for everyone else to become the best version of themselves. And I'm so grateful that he's a healthy enough individual that he was never threatened by my success. And as I grew into what, again, many people thought was like everything in the company, I was the CEO and all these things. And Eric created the space for that to be the case. And frankly, it helped me create the space for now. So many people know Gotham, Hikaru, Botez. They don't give about the guy who was in the background helping set it up, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? And I've learned so much from him, because I will be honest that I was not that person initially. I was a more damaged individual who wanted other things, and I wanted people to celebrate all that they are, but I also had a lot of vanity wrapped up in that for myself. And I think as I've learned the path of helping people celebrate their most authentic selves can be done without the sins of vanity that come with it, I've been able to support others in doing it. And he was the original person who helped me do that. And he does it every day. He really is like a very rare leader in that way.
This is going to sound funny, but you guys deserve each other in the best possible way.
Yeah.
The book is called Dark Squares. It is not called Searching for Danny Rensch, but you can find it by searching for Danny Rensch if you want. Really, really phenomenal book. I'm not just saying that. Danny, it's such a pleasure to spend time with you. You're a special person, and this book, I knew that from the way Eric talked about you, but reading this, it's going to change the world in small and big ways. what a gift to sit with you today.
Thanks, man.
Thanks,
Well,
brother.
Really appreciate
The
that.
obstacle is the way.
Thank you so much.